Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. And the name of this song is called Lost in the Void by Punch Deck. So, are you spiritually awake? I just heard somebody give the perfect example, or the perfect description. It's when, how did he say it? It's like when the conscious becomes unconscious, and when the subconscious becomes conscious. When he said that, I was like, that's what it is. It's the same thing when Jesus said to, again, I forget who it was, the guy who got into his ego. And it was like at the Last Supper when he said, hey, this is what's going to happen. They're going to basically brutalize me, hurt me, and beat me, etc., and kill me. And I think it was Peter, and he stood up and he said, I'll never let that happen. And Jesus said, get behind thee, Satan. So I'm going to share with you an experience that I had. I've shared it, but it was a long time ago, and it was mixed in with some other stuff. So this video is going to be solely focused on that. And as usual, the music will go down in probably in about a minute and a half. So everything that really, in all sincerity, if I could bring one core piece to what I teach, the number one main thing is shifting from your ego and then opening wide open. And it's the same thing when Jesus says, until you become like these children. Again, I'm not going to go look for the verse, but it's when he references, until you basically become like these children or childlike, you won't enter the gateway of heaven. Okay, I'm going to do it because there's always going to be that one person where you didn't reference it. So let's see here. Matthew 18:3, the greatest in the kingdom. What did it say? The greatest in the kingdom. The greatest. Truly, I tell you, he said, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, what are little children like? Well, first of all, they're very open to the left and their right brain. The right brain is the creative brain, it's the playful brain, it's the childish brain, it's the brain, it's the fun brain. And it's the open brain. Fully immersed in your emotions and your feelings. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like the Garden of Eden. Now, what happened in the book of Genesis after Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden fruit? They closed off from God. It says, and they hid. God came out in the garden, called out, Adam and Eve were out there. It says, and they hid. And then finally Adam said, we're hiding. And God says, why? He says, because we're naked, etc., etc. So when you're in your left brain, you are closed off from God. Especially when the left brain is closed off from the right brain. So there's another, I don't know the verse, and I can't even think of the phrase how it's stated, but there's another verse in the Bible where it basically says you shift, you become, and I can't even think of the way they say it, but it's like you change, like there is a change that happens within. And when you do that, all of a sudden, it's not about rules, it's not about, like doing what you're told, right or wrong. All of a sudden, it's like you're very conscious and aware, and you're coming from a place of love. So what I'm talking about is an experience that I had that I didn't really even understand what I was doing or at the time or even why I did it. So when I was about 19, I noticed in the Bible it kept saying over and over in the Old Testament to meditate, and it was God that was saying this. And I'm like, wait a minute, but people in the church say that meditation is evil. So I brought it up to the pastor, and I prepared, and what I mean is I put a bunch of markers in my Bible to where everywhere, and I circled the verses like where God said this. Like, meditate upon these words, to meditate upon this psalm, meditate upon this parable, meditate upon whatever. And I showed him over and over, and he goes, no, he goes, Michael, you're right. I'm like, so why don't people meditate in the church? He goes, they're not reading their Bible. So long story short, I started to meditate. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, didn't really understand it because nobody in the church even talked about it. So I just kind of got on my own and tried to meditate, and I tried to do this. Well, I learned this breathing technique in Hawaii, the Ha breathing technique. And I remember hearing someone saying focus on your breath, like that's a form of meditation, especially when you're doing a breathing technique like that. So I did that for a while, and I noticed if I would do that Ha breathing for more than 12 to 15 minutes, I would go into a different altered state. And I don't mean like completely altered, but it was like it was more relaxed. I was just very calm and had greater awareness. I was expanded. My awareness was just open. And then I remember hearing that deep prayer, deep meditation is a form of prayer. Well, I was like, wow, I've been doing that since I was a little kid. I would pray at nighttime for at least an hour, if not 2 hours. I would pray and pray and pray. And I realized, like, yeah, that put me in a much better state of mind as well. And as a child, I was a very tuned-in little kid. And I told you about when my grandma died in Montana, which was, I think, 2 or 3 states away. I instantly knew, and I ran upstairs crying to my mom, and I told her, etc., etc. So I had a lot of really powerful experiences. And by the way, if you haven't heard that story, my grandfather called back about an hour and a half or so from the hospital saying, hey, grandma just died. And I even told my mom she died in her new red Jeep in a head-on collision, and my mom was like, she doesn't have a red Jeep. I'm like, yes, she does. And grandpa said, yeah, she died in her new red Jeep. So due to sports and competing, I really got into stretching because I noticed if I wasn't flexible and loose, I felt stiff and I couldn't compete as well. I didn't win as often. So I did these really long warm-ups and stretches before any competition, before practice, and in the morning before I'd go for a 5, 6, 7 mile run. So I would stretch for 45 minutes, sometimes an hour longer, and I started doing this deep breathing technique where you breathe in deep, hold the breath, and then do the stretch for 20, 30 seconds, and you hold the breath the whole time, and then I'd breathe it out at the end, and then stretch it even further, okay? Well, many years later, I was at a gym. I was in my probably early 20s, something like that. And some guy from India walked up and goes, hey man, where'd you learn that yoga technique? And I'm like, yoga technique? What are you talking about? He said it is a very private yoga technique that's only taught in India. In this one guy teaches it, and it's only for certain people, etc., etc. So it's very private, and not anyone's allowed to learn it. He goes, so who taught that to you? And I said, I taught it to myself. So he ended up being my physical therapist about a year later, and we had a much deeper discussion because I was really blown away watching you do this here in America, because you're not allowed to teach this to anyone when you learn it. So I just explained how when I was a little kid, I just started stretching. I just began, and here's the thing, nobody really taught me stretching except maybe PE class and basic stretches, but I started to develop my own stretches and this deep breathing technique along with it, etc., etc. And it really, and the word I use now, as a kid I didn't know this word, but it really grounded me. It calmed my mind, my emotions, and it really made me feel good. And I performed really well in school, education, sports, choir, whatever I did. So kind of on accident, I was doing, now by the way, yoga is a form of meditation or stretching, just like, and this was just stretching. I mean, I don't want to go too in depth on that, but it was a lot of different stretches, etc. And I would do it for a long time, but stretching / yoga, okay? If you do this deep breath before you stretch and then lean into it and hold the breath for as long as you can, it literally opens you up. It opens up that artery in the lower reptilian brain because you're oxygenating your bloodstream. And when you stretch like that, it brings your awareness into your muscles, whatever one you're stretching at the time, thus bringing your energy back into your body. And that is what's called being grounded. It's your energy connects with you, and now you're electrically grounded. So here I am in my early 20s, let's say 20, 21, etc., trying to figure out how to meditate, etc. And I remember being at college, and some kid, I think I knew him from class, we happened to be sitting at the same table for lunch. And he was Asian, and this is probably, to be honest with you, why I brought this up. I said, man, I've been trying to learn how to this, that, and I went to this Berkeley, it was a yoga meditation place, and they said, oh, read this book. So I paid for the book, and it just told you the history about it. Give you a bunch of addresses at different locations where you could go to pay. I think it was like you had to pay like $500 or $1,000 or something. It was a ridiculous amount of money, and they would give you like a word, and you basically would meditate upon that, and it would be only your word. No one else would have it. So I was kind of pissed off. I was in college, and I didn't want to spend that much money on my own word. And what really pissed me off is the book didn't tell you how to meditate. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So then somebody recommended another book. It was the same thing. And it didn't say a damn thing about how to meditate. So at this point, I'm pissed. And I'm telling this kid this. He goes, honestly, what my mom says? She says everyone knows how to meditate. You just have to make yourself do it. And that kind of kicked into my athletic sports, martial arts, determination, mindset. And it's like, all right, boom. And that's what it was. I just did it. So it was just a commitment thing. And once he said that, something just clicked in my brain, and boom, I was committed. I was going to do it no matter what until I got there. So I did. I kept at it, and I kept at it. What happened was I started putting the pieces together. I did this deep breathing technique for about 15 minutes, and then I would do this stretching for about 30, 40 minutes with that deep breath thing that I did. And then when I started to add, I would do a salt bath, right, with lavender oil. A really, really hot one, as hot as I could do, as hot as I could get it. And I would even turn up my apartment, the heat all the way up in my living room. And then what I would do is I would stretch. I would do the deep breathing, and then I would stretch for like an hour, hour and a half. I would just max it out to where my muscles were completely loose. So I would do the Ha breathing for 15 plus minutes to 20, 25 minutes. I would do that super hot salt bath with the lavender oil. And then I would stretch, doing that deep breath first, and then stretch and hold as long as I could. At first, when you do that stretch, it may only be 10 seconds, and then 12, and then 15, and then 18, then 20, then 25, then 30. And I would be holding stretches for like a minute, sometimes 2 minutes. Now my breath, I probably couldn't hold it that long, but what I would do is then take another deep, let it out and take and stretch forward even more. And then I would take a deep, deep breath while I'm holding the stretch as much as I could, and then continue it. And then after that, I would probably do Ha breathing some more until I really felt that deep, deep breath, just complete relaxation. And then I would go into the meditation. And I would be gone. And I mean, it's a complete void. Like there's nothingness. And that's what the book in the Bible talks about in the book of Genesis. So it's Genesis 1 verse 2. So chapter 1 verse 2. I'm going to start with verse 1 though, okay? So Genesis 1 verse 1. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, Genesis 1 verse 2. I'm going to do the King James. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Alright, now let's discuss that for a minute. Alright, so when you meditate and you go into that deep space, what's going to happen is you're going to have a complete letting go. Like there's no thinking, it's nothingness. And I mean absolutely nothingness. So let me read it again. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's exactly what it's like. Like, this space you enter is just deep. There's nothing but darkness, and there's nothing but void, meaning absolute nothingness. There's no feelings, there's no emotions. Literally, and I'm not kidding, I could have had a broken leg and the pain would have completely disappeared. That's what happens when you learn how to meditate. Like, all of a sudden you're like, how do I explain it? Like, your body's there, but you don't, like, everything goes. Like, all the, God, how to explain this? Anything, if you're sick, if you have allergies, if you have pain, if you have, even if you have a problem with your back, like, all of a sudden the problem's just gone. So first of all, when you enter this void, this space of nothingness, and nothingness is a good thing, okay? This is where you can create. Whatever you imagine, it begins to create. You'll feel it. You'll be like, wow. Like, once you get there, wow, I can create from this space. Like, you can feel it. And you'll know. And when I get to that space, that's when I can really manifest stuff. And I wanted to put this picture in here because it says, you are loved beyond measure. I think that's really, really important for a lot of people who believe in Jesus and God to understand that, because that really wasn't the message that was pushed across. The other message of you're a sinner, you're no good, etc. was pushed, whereas this message needs to be pushed even more. So early in the video, I really gave you the steps, at least my steps, for how I meditate, okay? So do the hot bath, and then do the breathing while you stretch, that deep breathing, and hold it, and then, you know, start at 8 to 10 seconds, then 12, 15, etc. Okay, so that's number 2. And again, do that for at least, I would say, 20 or 30 minutes at least, and then sit in the lotus position or whatever position you're going to sit in, and do ha breathing for at least 15, 20 minutes. Like, you'll know, because something just releases in your chest and your gut, and then you go into your meditation. The only thing I left out was, when a thought comes up, let it go. Notice it, but have an expanded awareness, and don't focus on it. Allow your awareness to expand even wider, all the way left and right. And sometimes you get caught up in a thought, like you'll start thinking and, you know, about what that thought is, and go, oh, okay, don't punish yourself. Just go, oh, and notice that, and notice where that thought is. And usually it's going to be in your head, your forehead. Sometimes it'll be in your heart, but just notice where it's at and expand your awareness, and then let it go. And it'll spin out all on its own. By the way, this is not the tree of life. This is the tree of awesome. Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's a tree of life, which is awesome. Alright, so I'd been going to energy healers, doing NLP therapy, you know, timeline therapy on myself, you know, going to practitioners, doing it on my own, etc., meditating, and for a long time. So I think at this point I know when I popped, it was when about 2 weeks after my 28th birthday, which I found out later was a very spiritually important birthday, because they say that's when Jesus essentially went through this shift himself. And if I remember right, he came back at the age of 28. So 28, the 4 sevens, is a very kind of spiritual cycle. Okay, generally, if you're going to wake up spiritually on this level, you're going to do it about that time. So I had as I've told you in the past, really bad anxiety, like ridiculously bad, and that's what got me into meditation. That's why I was really doing it, because it would calm me down so much, and nothing helped, like nothing. And I don't like to do drugs, I don't like to do medication, I don't like to drink. So that was my go-to. So approximately, I didn't really count the years, but I'm going to say approximately 9-ish years, okay, 8, 9, 10 years, I had been meditating every single day. And essentially the results were, if I meditated for 2 hours, I would have relief from anxiety for an hour in public. So I could go in public and be in this very calm, open state. But about an hour into it, it all came back. It got stuck on my forehead, my ego, let's call it, and in the closed tips. So I just continued, and then I thought, okay, well, I'll do it for 3 hours, and then 4. And over the years, eventually on the weekends, as I said, I would meditate easily 8 hours on the weekends. In fact, at the very end, for 2 years, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped working out completely. So the number of hours had increased. I was doing it in the morning for at least an hour and a half before work or school, depending on what I was doing at the time. And then I would do it at nighttime for about 2 hours or longer. Okay. And then on the weekends, I'd do it for 4, 6, 8 hours. And then there was a very last 2 weeks where I wasn't going to school and I wasn't at work. And I just meditated. It was, if I remember, it was 14 or 15 days every day, all day long for easily 12 hours, if not 16. So at the very end, I remember feeling very clear, but something was just not complete. And I was just like, like, God, like, what do you want from me? And it's like I gave my all. And I remember I was upset because something, I don't know if it was the anxiety didn't, because I know that when I meditate, like there was no anxiety, but it was like something in my life had shifted that I wanted to shift. And I remember I just like cried out. And it was, you know what it was? It was the anxiety. I think someone called me or someone did something and the anxiety came right back. And I remember I cried out, I looked up and I cried out to God and I just begged him, please come inside me and just take this away, like take over me. And I remember pleading and begging and asking God to come, the Spirit to come inside me over and over. And I remember I just cried and I just like, I give up. And then I remember I was so tired that I just went to bed and I think I slept for 8, 10, maybe even 12 hours. Now, I'm saying it kind of calm this time around, but when I gave up, I was bawling. I was like, I quit. I can't do this anymore. I don't know what to do. And I remember I was just like, and I remember when I quit, I just like, my emotions just stopped. I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. And I remember saying, I give up. And here's the thing, though. Now, watch this. I want to emphasize something first. When I was looking up, I was pleading for God to come inside me, to heal me, to take this away. And it was just like absolute exhaustion at that point, because my whole life I'd tried to be this perfect person, follow the rules, live in the box, do what I'm told, do what I was taught. And I just quit. I just completely let go. And I remember I went to bed. I slept like a absolute baby. And that was the weird thing. Like, I fell asleep like that. And I never fell asleep that fast, ever. I never felt so good in my life when I woke up. I felt good. And the weird thing was I felt kind of guilty. Like, wow, I quit. And why do I feel so good? Is it because I gave up? No, it's because I completely and totally let go. It's like that song in church, I surrender all, over and over, I surrender all. And for the first time in my life, I completely, totally surrendered. I completely surrendered. I don't know how to explain it. I stopped fighting. I stopped fighting everything. I stopped fighting myself. I stopped trying to be perfect. I stopped fighting the rules. I stopped fighting. I gave up. What I did was I let go. And without realizing it, that was the secret key to opening the door to God. And that launched a 6-month awakening that was mind-blowing. Not just for me, but all the people around me. I was telling people what they were thinking. I was saying things before they were going to say it. My sister was like, what are you doing? Is this some kind of a trick? So she pulled out a deck of cards, and I go, hold it up and look at it. But just picture in your mind's eye what color it is and what like if it's a heart or diamond and what the number is. And she did, and boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She goes, oh, you must have marked this deck. So she went in the back and got a brand new deck that was hers, and that deck was hers too. And brought it out and unwraps the plastic, and she goes, now do it. And I think I got up to like 15, and she just burst out in tears because it freaked her out. She had 2 friends there, Sandy and Sherry were there when I did that too. God, there's so much. There was, okay, then me and my girlfriend were walking up to a door. She's Laotian, by the way. And I would open the door, the electrical thing, I would concentrate the energy in front of that electrical, like, laser beam, and boom, it would open the door. And I go, stop. Now, we're about 10, 12 feet away. I go, watch this. Now, do it. And the door would open. She goes, what? I go, look at the door. And I would open it over and over. And she's like, what? I go, okay, is the door closed? She goes, yeah. I go, watch this. And I'd do it again. And she goes, oh, are you doing that? Like, yes, I'm the one who's been doing that. There was a lot of things that had happened at those times, from healing people to just it's a lot of stuff that went on that 6 months. So I'm going to leave that at that. So that morning when I woke up after I completely meditated for 14 days, I didn't eat any food, by the way, at all. Just water. I think I had water and maybe a little bit of salt. I don't think I even had salt, but it was just water. Might have had salt. So I completely gave up and invited God to come in, and like nothing happened. And so I remember I fell asleep, but when I woke up, I remember feeling like something's different. Like it was very calm and my body felt really at peace. That's probably the best way to explain it. And I remember something was telling me, like, go look in the mirror. And so I sat up and I looked at my hands, and my hands looked like, what's this? So what happened is, unconsciously we'll take a picture of our hands and even our face. It's kind of like a computer where it stores in the history, in the cache or whatever, in the memory. And I'm looking at my hands like, when did I get all those scars? And when did it aged like 10 years? I'm like, what the hell? I was like, oh, I probably never really looked at my hands in that long. So then I went to the mirror and I looked in the mirror. Now, as I've told you guys, I was not raised to believe I was a beautiful person or attractive or anything. I was told the opposite, that I was like super ugly. And so ugly to the extent that just accept any woman in marriage that would accept me because I'm so brutally ugly. That's what my mom and my older sister told me for years. So I remember I went and looked in the mirror, and I couldn't tell if my face was attractive, but I looked at my eyes and they were this crystal clear blue. And it wasn't just the color, but there was something like the energy that was coming out of them. And it was just like, they're so beautiful. And it's almost like I fell in love with myself. I don't know how to explain that, but I fell in love with my eyes. And for some reason, I felt so good about myself for the first time in my life. I also remember thinking, I don't know if I'm actually a good looking guy, but my eyes are beautiful. And that's something you couldn't take away from me. And for the first time in my life, I felt really good about myself in every way, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, energetically. I just felt really good. This was the beginning of loving myself, and this is what I recommend, that you really, really learn to fall in love with yourself, take care of yourself, nurture those emotions and feelings, because they're like little children. I mean, don't yell at them. Don't get mad at them. They're little children that need you to support them and to love them. And this is how you become more connected and more conscious. Alright, God bless you guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little different. And if you haven't clicked subscribe, go ahead and click subscribe. It really helps the channel. Click the like button, make a comment, and if you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link right there in the description box. Alright guys, God bless you and thank you very much.